This is Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. Insights to give your business the inside track. And now, here's your host, Joel Block.
Besides all the tech worries that I have already about our computers and cybersecurity, what is there that I don't know about that I need to focus on to save our company in the future? To answer that question, Vince Scott. Vince, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Joel.
Hey, listen, so what kinds of concerns should these leaders of middle-sized companies have? I mean, what are the kinds of things people should be concerned about?
Yeah, I think cybersecurity is a very difficult spot for a medium-sized company. You're big enough to be a target, and you're small enough that it's very difficult to afford expensive defenses for your enterprise, right? So I like to talk about fundamental blocking and tackling. I'm a big NFL analogy guy. I think that there's a lot of talk about the technologies and the high-end stuff in cybersecurity. But for medium-sized companies, let's keep it simple, focus on the fundamentals. Fundamental number one is having the right people as a part of your enterprise. As a medium-sized company, you might not have anybody in-house that looks at security. If you're outsourcing your website, your IT, those capabilities, then you should be engaging a company that offers some security with what they bring to the table for you. I think that's number one. I think number two, think backups.
Hang on a second. Let's unpack that, because that's a mouthful all by itself. So let's say that most medium-sized companies, $10 million all the way to sometimes even $1 billion, will outsource these services because they don't have the overhead to bring it all inside. Just like you're saying, I think you're absolutely right. They have their web company. They have maybe their SaaS companies that handle some of their cloud stuff. They've got Dropboxes. I mean, they've probably got a patchwork of different kinds of things. When you say a company that handles their security, is that the same company? Is it a different company? What kinds of responsibilities should these companies be focused on? I mean, what exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, so I think that when you talk about from a $10 million company to a $1 billion company, you cover a lot of ground, right? And along that maturity continuum, I would expect those companies to have more reliance on IT and more overhead investment in their information technology architecture, because as you move up that scale, every company today, to a certain extent, is an information technology company. Our businesses today run on IT. You and I had a conversation prior to starting this about, well, what happens when the internet goes out? Well, people start canceling and rescheduling, et cetera, because we can't get our business done. And in the same way as for medium-sized companies who are doing all different kinds of things across the board, right? There still needs to be this slice of, I rely on my information technology to get my business done, whether that's my cash registers, whether that's running credit cards, whether that's controlling inventory, manufacturing, don't care what it is. IT sort of underlies everything today. So as you look at the places where you buy services for that, you should also be looking at what the security component of that is. I think you can buy it baked in with a company. Let's say you are a Google for Business company, right? And Google for Business is going to spend billions of dollars on their security, and that may be good for you. And leveraging the capabilities that Google brings to the table is an important part of the equation. Maybe you're spread out across a number of different areas and IT service providers. Then you got to think about, well, how do I secure this diverse set of capabilities that we have? Because ultimately, people are going to want to come after your business and your money. I've had people talk to me about, well, I'm a soap and diaper company, who would hack me? And my answer to them was everybody who wants a slice of your $85 billion a year. The even very small companies or very small organizations can be subject to this. So I think every medium-sized business owner needs to have at least a thought about cybersecurity, because a failure there can bring your business down.
Okay, so let me understand something here. So let's say you use the state-of-the-art AWS services, or you know the Amazon, or let's say you use Google's high-end services. I mean, they have all these security measures built in. Is that good enough, or do you need your own layer in addition to what layer they give you?
Yeah, so some of that is built in, but often on those big services, you have to be configured correctly. So if I'm using AWS and AWS has a lot of security built in, that doesn't mean it's securing me if I don't have it configured correctly. And those configurations from a cloud perspective actually require some expertise. And honestly, I think AWS is a great example where a lot of companies are losing their data and information because they put it in the cloud and they think, oh, I'm good, not realizing that they haven't configured that cloud to actually be secure, and in many cases leaving it wide open to anybody who wants to scan AWS on the internet. So that people piece of that is important.
Different kinds of companies have different regulations about this. Like, let's say hospitals, and hospitals, let's say, do several $100 million a year. So they're kind of in this bucket with us where we're talking. They have all these HIPAA requirements. They have to secure things in a certain way. And other kinds of companies, attorneys might have requirements to secure things in a certain way. And CPAs might have to secure things in a certain way. But maybe manufacturers don't, unless they deal with the government. And then, I mean, there's all these different regulations. I mean, are there different kind of IT people that specialize just in these different industries, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there certainly are people who specialize in those industries. I'm one who is specializing right now in compliance against the Department of Defense and the federal requirements. There are certainly people who specialize in HIPAA, PCI, credit card is another place where folks specialize. But I would argue that a lot of that is there's a compliance piece to this. How do I secure my environment if I'm a hospital for HIPAA and I have to be compliant, and I have compliance risk if I don't meet the HIPAA requirements? In parallel with that is what I would call the real security requirements. And a lot of times from a real security requirements perspective, there's a tremendous amount of overlap, right? There are different standards, but in a lot of ways, they talk about all of the same things, just maybe stacked up a little bit differently. So from a real security perspective, as you look at securing your business and being worried about somebody hacking you, I think the kinds of people that specialize in security is really where to look, and that is not as industry vertical specific. When you start talking about it through the compliance lens, then I think there absolutely is industry specific areas that you want to consider.
Is there a guideline for or a rule of thumb about how much a company should spend on their IT security? I mean, let's say that your computers are working, but you're talking about adding a layer of security on top of making sure the computers are working. It's a different thing.
Yep, it is. I don't know if there's a guideline for expenditures, but I think you should probably, more important than the amount of money is that you spend, is the quality of people you have working on this problem. So, and I think for every 250 employees or so, you probably should be thinking about a security person or an IT person who has security in their portfolio at the very least, who's helping to support you.
This opens so many questions, and they're all hard questions. If you're an attorney or an accountant or a business, executive, you don't know that much about computers. Probably you probably don't know that much about the details of what we're talking about right now. How do you even hire this kind of person? Like, how do you know that you're hiring a high-level person, and how do you know that high-level person is doing a high-level job until it's too late? It's like you don't know you have a great accountant until it's too late, or you don't know you have a great lawyer till it's too late, or you're a great doctor till it's too late. How do you know that the guy that you've hired, or woman, by the way, I hate to do that, but how do you know that the person that you've hired is got what it takes to keep you safe?
Yeah, that's always a great question. I think from a starting point perspective is at the lower end of the medium scale, I'd be looking to hire a company to do this for me, like a managed security service provider. So there's companies out there that do security services for you as their job, and that would be a place where I would start with
and this
that.
is different. This is different than the people who manage your computers, right?
Absolutely right.
I mean, so the security of your computers and the operations of your computers should be treated separately.
Honestly, I think so, and I think that when I came to the security industry, I was very much in that the chief information security officer should work for the chief information officer. So if you had a head security guy, that should probably fit in your IT organization. As you move up your scale towards that $1 billion company, right? In the modern context, or based on my experience now, I actually think you should probably split those responsibilities out. Because one of the biggest problems I see is that there can be a conflict of interest with the guy who runs your IT and the guy who runs your security, because the guy who runs your IT is incentivized to not find problems. And one of the things I talk about is the biggest problem in security is the truth you don't want to know. And I see it all the time. I've seen it in hospitals as a significant problem, where security works for the IT guy. The IT guy knows he's not getting any more budget, so we're not going to find any security problems. What part of I told you we weren't finding any problems, didn't you understand? That might keep you compliant, but it doesn't get you real security, and it leaves you with hidden risk, right? I'm a big guy about, hey, let's have all the risk on the table so that the executives can make an informed decision about it. And if you have that conflict of interest between security and IT, I think sometimes you can have a lot of hidden risk there that you don't understand.
Yeah, I totally see it the same way. I mean, it's these are complicated issues. I mean, I've dealt with these kinds of people, these kinds of IT people, and they're hard to deal with. It's hard to see who's good, who's not good.
Yep.
Is it generally okay to hire, especially if you're under a couple hundred people, like you're saying, a company to do this for you? I mean, are they around enough? I mean, how do you even pick a company or a vendor to do that for you?
Yeah, so I think there are quite a few companies out there. I think there's some things to consider in your choice of a managed security service provider. Most cities in America have at least a couple of companies, if not a handful, that probably do that full time, right? They're going to do vulnerability scanning for you. They're going to do penetration testing for you. They're going to do incident response. So I've had a problem. I've had ransomware. I've had something. They come in and help you clean it up. Those kind of companies are out there. I think that a lot of times I like small and medium-sized companies in that space, because I think you can get a good product that's value priced as opposed to the bigs, right? So McAfee will do this for you. Symantec will do this for you. You can hire others who are, CrowdStrike or other companies that are big in the space. I don't know that you always get their full attention if you're a small or medium-sized company when you hire those guys. So it comes at a premium, and you're not a priority for them. So for me, advising small and medium-sized companies, I tend to look for niche players that are local to your industry, to your headquarters, that you can have a relationship with to make sure that you're getting their best effort all the time.
Let's talk about what's at stake here. If you don't do a good job with this, I mean, it's one thing they go into your bank account or something. I mean, that is possible. But wasn't there some kind of a terrible breach some months ago, and they went in through a small company, and then they got into the federal government, they got into Microsoft. I mean, they got into all the big companies by going through a little company who probably they knew would be more vulnerable. and and I don't know if that company had any liability for being vulnerable. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, could you
Yep. No,
talk about what's at stake here?
Yeah. So that particular hack there is SolarWinds, right? Is the way most people are. That's the name of a company that provides an IT management software that was penetrated a large portion of the market. So a lot of Fortune 500 and a lot of government had the SolarWinds software in their environment. It gave remote access to their environments. And really what was done with SolarWinds was very high end, right? That was nation state stuff, very a lot of time spent, a lot of man hours spent in order to be able to develop and execute that style of attack where they actually got into SolarWinds, modified the regular SolarWinds update so that the next time SolarWinds updated its software with their clients, they actually created a backdoor that nation state could use to access whoever had that installation. I think that's going to be a hard one to stop, and particularly as a small or medium-sized guy, you're probably not going to be able. If Russia puts 10,000 man hours against hacking you, you're probably not going to win. I would expect our government to do better, and that's on them. I think from the
let me ask you.
though,
Let me stop you for a second. I mean, so as a citizen, as a businessman, not as a computer person, I look at this and I just shake my head and I say, how could our smartest computer people allow such a thing to happen? I mean, is that naive of me and we just got outsmarted, or did we let our guard down? I mean, what really happened in that hack that went wrong?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things that went wrong there. If we're talking about it from a United States perspective, right? So one of the things that goes wrong there, and this continues to be a problem, I think it's a worse problem in government. To a lesser extent, it's still a problem in industry, which is a hard shell outside and a soft gooey center, right? So we have this concept that we have our perimeter set, and that everything outside is bad, but once everything is good inside, it's assumed to be good, right? We don't take precautions on our internal environment from a cybersecurity perspective the way that we should. The second thing is detection. I think the most important question in this is not why did it happen? Because as a guy who used to play offense and now coaches defense, right? It's pretty hard to keep it from happening. But what you can do is you can detect it in a reasonable amount of time. So not only did this occur, but it went for over 9 months before it was detected. That, I think, is where the primary problem is. And by, from a federal government perspective, tuning their detection capabilities in order to look for the unusual and look for what shouldn't be happening, that sort of thing, as opposed to assuming that something that goes on and once it makes it inside your network must be okay because it's on the inside, is a bad philosophical approach to this, and it's one we've been making in IT for years. To a certain extent, we're starting to move away from that with things like zero trust, but it's still out there, and the federal government lags behind, and so it's still big in the federal government, right? So I think the question for the federal government is not why that it happened, because offense guys try, and they can try 100 times and succeed once, and they're heroes. Defense guys can succeed 99 times and fail once, and they're zeros, right? Yet they fail to meet standards. And that's a really hard bar to make for a defense guy. So you're going to get had. That's part of, as you move towards the larger business perspective, you've got to assume bad things are going to happen. How do I know when it happens? And how do I have a plan to deal with it expeditiously when it happens? That prevents those guys from measuring you for the Sunday punch. And that includes things like ransomware, right? Some ransomware is just designed to get your laptop and get your stuff, but hospital systems that are getting ransomware that are being brought down by this, that doesn't happen because one person clicked the link and 6 seconds later, it's encrypting your imagery database at the heart of your hospital system, which you can't live without. That somebody clicked the link, somebody got in, but then they spent time seeing what was and where do we think we can hurt them the most and how can we ask for the most amount of money. That happens at human speed, and that takes time. If you can detect that, you can prevent them from measuring you for the Sunday punch. And so back to the truth we don't want to know, detection is often underloved, because honestly, I don't want to detect that bad things are going on, because then I have to deal with them and I don't have time or money or effort to do that.
Well, that's like putting your head in the sand. I mean, that's not a great strategy either. I mean, so I love that offense defense thing where the offense guys get all the credit, and the defense guys 99 times out of 100 they're doing great one time and they're terrible.
Right.
I love that. I think that that really resonates for me, because it kind of seems to describe it. But what's bothering me here as somebody who is subject to these problems, is that okay, so I got to worry about my personal stuff like my credit cards and my social security number. And then I got to worry about, the ransom thing, like they're going to lock up my computers so that they stop working. And then I got to worry about my business, my business activities and my bank accounts. And then I got to worry about, when does this stop? I mean, is this something that I need to lose sleep over? Or is there a solution out there where I can kind of calm down about this? Or is there insurance? What's the steps that I take as a business executive to kind of get some comfort over this?
Yeah. So I think the first thing as a business executive is risk. And you got to look at it through the risk lens. And that's what we pay business executives to do every day, is to manage the risk. What we need to do is not under-realize the risk. I think a lot of business executives do underappreciate the risk in cyber, and therefore we don't prioritize our spend or our investment in mitigating that risk because we underappreciate the size of the risk. Every time we hook our laptop to the internet, think about walking out your door in the worst neighborhood in one of America's great cities, right? I won't throw anybody in particular under the bus. They might be mad at me, but pick one. And you'll go, well, I would risk mitigate if I was walking out the door. If I had my office and I was walking out the door in that worst neighborhood in town, I would have some risk mitigation that I would do, right? Maybe I would move my office to a safer location. Maybe I would have bars on the windows. I would do things to make sure my people stayed safe, because I would kind of realize that risk, right? I would see that happening every day. And one of the things we don't see from internet land is we're next door to everybody in the world on this thing, including the worst neighborhoods of town, right? The worst hacker neighborhood in Eastern Europe, we're right next door. We're one IP address away.
The thing is that the bad guys on the internet are not thugs with guns. I mean, they're really, really smart people. They're really smart, and they know. I mean, they're like shockingly smart, and they know how to outsmart other people. And it's you can't tell who they are from looking at them.
They're not just individuals. This is a business now, right? So particularly on the small and medium-sized side, where you're not really, I'm a soap and diaper company. I don't have any secrets that the Russians would want, but I've got my cash flow in my company and my business, and people want to steal that. Well, how do they do that? The hacker community, particularly Russian and Chinese organized crime, is very organized. Hacking is a bigger organized crime cash flow than drug running in the United States, and has been for several years. More gross in hacking than in bringing drugs into the United States. Think about that.
Wow. That's a shocking statistic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like 2018, the FBI estimated that organized crime actually took more money out of the U.S. from cyber than from drug running.
Wow.
That's good cash flow. And think about the risk compared to running drugs. right? If I'm an organized criminal, my risk profile for my people and what I'm doing and actually being arrested is vanishingly smaller for doing hacking than it is for doing drug running. Vanishingly.
Well, yeah, plus the long arm of the law, it's hard to reach you in a lot of these places if they can find you at all because you're invisible or whatever. I mean, it's totally different.
Well, and multi-jurisdiction, right? The jurisdictional challenge. So I've seen a hack that occurred in France. The money went to Nigeria and then went to Turkey and landed in Poland. How do you get the cops to go after that?
Yeah, well, listen, anything outside the United States is hard.
Say again?
Anything outside the United States is hard.
Yeah, right. It's anything outside the United States is hard. And so that was a U.S. company that had offices in France. Their phone system was hacked. They dialed a 1-900 number on a Friday evening in Nigeria, kept it on all weekend, filtered the proceeds from that through Turkey to Poland. But getting somebody to actually go after that, darn near impossible, even for a Fortune 500 company. It's just, right.
Some of these things, it's not worth, it's not worth it. It's embarrassing if it's 50 or 100 grand or whatever the threshold is.
It's 100 grand or 300 grand.
Situation. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things too, I think why business executives don't appropriately gauge the risk is because the majority, more than half of all the successful hacking that goes on never hits the papers because there's no requirement to report. That scenario I just gave you, there is no legal requirement for any company in the United States to report that. So it's not on the FBI's crime list, right? That's a loss that they just write off, but it doesn't go into anybody's listing of hacking that occurred or how it occurred or community policing or intelligence on how hacks are happening. None of that. That company knows about that, nobody else. And you go down the street to another company and then they've got their thing that they know about, nobody else, which is part of the reason why executives don't necessarily have an accurate risk picture of this, because they hear about ransomware, and because ransomware hits things in the city of Atlanta can't deny or just fail to tell people that there's a problem when the driver's license office is down for a month, right? They have to have an explanation. So that then you hear about the ransomware. A lot of other forms of hacking, even when they're discovered by companies, are never publicized because there's no requirement to do so. And as you said, it's embarrassing.
Well, so what I'm hearing is that the inside track on cybersecurity, really number one is defense more than offense. It's about determining that you've got a problem and stopping the problem. You can't entirely prevent the problem, but the best, smartest, and fastest people are learning about these problems as soon as they can. Better companies are outsourcing. I mean, so you've said a lot of things that are really sharp. Could you just wind down for us and tell us what are a couple of steps that companies could take to protect themselves? Because now people aren't really not going to sleep at night. I mean, now you've kind of made the problem worse because now we know it's like, somebody just ate the golden apple here and now we know, and that makes you nervous. So what can we do?
Yeah, I will start with, everybody knows about special forces, right? U.S. Special Operations Command. Special Forces has 4 truths. I'll only trouble you with the first one. People are more important than hardware. We often think about this as a technology problem. It's not a technology problem. It's a people problem. If you have a choice between getting a cool technology and getting a smart person or a smart company that you outsource this as a smart person working on this, choose people over technology.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll take that as the inside track.
Awesome. Thank you. Great being with you.
Listen, Vince, thank you very much for sharing your insights. Now I got another thing to worry about, or 10 more things to worry about. So thank you for that, for heaping more stuff on my plate. But listen, hopefully somebody's going to get some benefit from this. You're a wonderful resource, and I appreciate you sharing with us.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. For more insights and to learn more, visit joelblock.com.
How about a shout out and a huge thanks to our podcast show producer, David Wolf, and the team at Audivita Studios. Profit from the Inside wouldn't be possible without these wonderful professionals. To learn more or to find out how you can launch and produce your own podcast show, reach out to www.audivita.com. That's AUDIVITA.com.